Clamp, the weekly podcast where we discuss all things related to creating, living, and making projects. I'm the host, Grant Alexander, and joining me as always is Adam Mackey and Jessy Ratfink. This week, we have a special guest. You may know her from the hundreds of how-to articles she has published over the years on topics ranging from how to braid your hair to a Cylon scooter. If you're lucky, you might have even seen her work featured in a museum or on the second man on the moon. She's an OG maker, hailing from a tiny workshop in the Big Apple. It's Becky Stern. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey. Thanks for having me. That's such a warm introduction.
Oh, thank you. Well, if you want, give for a few of us who haven't been on the internet since 2005 when you started posting stuff, why don't you tell some of our listeners who you are and what you do?
Well, like you said, I live in New York City, so I make projects that fit inside my house. I dropped out of grad school twice. One of those schools was a MFA in sculpture where I learned how to weld and make big things, and that seemed really fun. But I've got really bad knees, so I tend to stick to stuff that's desktop sized, which then allows me to make stuff that fits inside a New York City apartment. I love to teach people electronics and crafts. So a lot of times my projects combine electronics and crafts or just lean heavily towards one or the other. I really like 3D printing and making things out of materials that feel nice to touch. So that means I really like knitting and embroidery, and I really hate like sanding or things that have to do with epoxy, or like I don't hate them. I just dislike doing them myself all the time. And I'm also a part-time teacher. I teach at this grad program here at School of Visual Arts is in a graduate program called Products of Design, which is about entrepreneurship and also industrial design. And I teach like electronics programming and crafts. I teach like sewing and soldering and programming Arduino. So I have a lot of experience showing people how to do things on the internet. And I really like photography and videography. And so the whole farm to table situation of filming all your work, editing the DIY project instructions and publishing it for other people to use is something I find really satisfying.
Yeah. And you've been doing it, since the internet existed, according to Jessy. You were one of the OG, like Jessy's like fangirling over here.
I don't know how that's possible because I'm not a day over 21.
Wow. We're recording on International Women's Day today. It's Wednesday, March 8th. And we wanted to have, now that we actually have a woman host, we wanted to have an opportunity to get a couple of different perspectives on women in making. And when we were talking about that, Jessy suggested that we get Becky on, and why don't you take it away, Jessy?
Yeah, so when I first started kind of hanging out in the maker scene and learning about it, Becky was one of the first people I saw. Because back then, I was really into Craftzine.com and Craft Magazine. And so I learned about Becky, Corinne of Threadbanger, Meg Ellen Cole, Crafty Chica, Lynn Bruning, all of these awesome lady makers who were doing things that weren't just crafty. And that was really exciting to me because where I grew up, it's very traditional. There are roles that men and women fill. I was sort of pushed away from doing the more manly interests that I had. And so, I ended up doing quilting and cooking and embroidery, but really I would have loved to have been in shop class. So yeah, just seeing all of the different women out there making cool shit that wasn't always female focused was awesome to me. Yeah. So it's, I don't know, or Ready Made Magazine is another big one. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that.
You're really taking me back.
I was having super nostalgia writing this up.
Or like the Bust Holiday Craftacular Bust magazine would do that craft show. Oh man.
Yes.
It was a time of innocence before the thing they call clickbait.
It's so true. Yeah, like Ready Made Magazine, founded by two women, a lot of women content creators featured in their pages, and it was all sorts of stuff, from like home improvement to clothing to like fixing your car, just random stuff. It was always really fun. That was from 2002 to 2011. And then Pinterest was another big thing for women, especially on the crafty side and ladies that sold stuff as well, because Pinterest and Etsy sort of blew up at about the same time. And both were really, really big for me starting a business. I just think it allowed a larger audience of people to start selling stuff and having their face out there. So yeah, I don't know, Becky, if you have
It was
any
the first social
memories
Pinterest
early.
if I recall correctly, Pinterest is the first social media platform to have the majority women using it. Like their user base skews predominantly female.
Yeah,
As far as I know, it still does.
it does.
But
Yeah,
that was but it might not be the only one anymore, so it's sort of paved the way in forming like I don't know, I think that most technology is already gendered and heavily so male, and so when there's something like Pinterest that comes along that like tries to be sort of feminine, has like rounded corners, and they started this tile up board, right? That like it comes across as like super gendered because they're actually acknowledging gender at all, when like really all cell phones, like if the company is 90% male, then the cell phones are designed for men. Like why can't I hold my cell phone in my hand?
That's really interesting that you like when you think of certain websites, like I never really thought of how gender sort of comes into it. Like if I think of Etsy, for some reason in my head, I just assume that everyone on there are females selling stuff, or like you said with Pinterest and that. And then like you go into like say cricket groups or whatever, and a guy will put up a post saying like, how do I do this or whatever, and people are shocked that there's a guy using a vinyl cutter.
Yeah, or like when there's a YouTube channel, I can't remember what it is now, man sewing or something. That's like overtly gendered because it says it's like, because that's implying that it's defying the gender stereotype. I find it funny.
Yeah, that's Chad from Mancrafting. It all started because his like wife made fun of him for like doing these like tumblers in his like living room, and they were like, "Oh, you're gonna go craft with your buddies." He's like, "Yeah, we're man crafting," and I think that's a great like start. And now he's stuck with it, and I think it's actually a really like at first when I heard his first name, I was like, "That's a silly name," but the story behind it is actually really great.
Yeah, it's very cute and catchy, but it's implying that it's something, right? It's implying that those two words don't go together, or it's just I don't know.
I think you do have that, like both sides of, there still is definitely that stigma that we need to get rid of male making, like things that male should be doing and things that females should be doing. And I think that definitely needs to go. Like, people, my personal trainer put up her story today. It really opened my eyes a lot. She said 10 years ago, she started her business. A guy walked in, saw her, walked straight back out, because he expected to get trained by a male. And she was saying like how times have changed and it's not like that anymore. But it was not as much like that anymore. But it's crazy. Like I never really, like, until seeing all the stories that I'm seeing today, I don't know why, but International Women's Day seems so much bigger this year that it's really opened my eyes to what you guys have had to go through. And it's crazy. Like I never, like from a male's point of view, we don't see it, so it's crazy.
Yeah, but you listen to women's experience, and I guess that's what matters in talking about it, because the internet has like so much vitriol, and it is disproportionately distributed. But acknowledging it is useful, and looking out for each other is useful, and knowing that it's never going to be 100% even or fair still liking it anyway. Like I've managed to cultivate a really positive audience. Like I used to run the Make Magazine YouTube channel, then I grew the Adafruit YouTube channel, and now I'm working on my own YouTube channel, and I have very different experiences managing those different properties. And I'm happy to say that I'm my own brand. People who don't want the female energy are like not invited. There's no reason for them to stay. And
exactly.
I can make them leave. I can make them not part of the conversation, where like I've been previously been told all comments are engagement and don't delete comments.
Yep.
And that's downright employee abuse. And it's nice to see how far we've come, that there's all these tools now, and that like, not that the people have gotten better. Teenage boys will always be mean on the internet, but there's a lot more tools for filtering out and moderating stuff.
It's interesting because a podcast I listened to was actually talking about how much hate they get from just, and they're all men, but they were talking about how much hate they get and how little tools they have to deal with the hate, right? And they're obviously newer at the social media game, and I think they don't realize that oftentimes it's actually come a long way in how much you actually do have today compared to what you had 10 years ago, dealing with, how did you couldn't even block people sometimes on some websites. Like you could not, if someone was just going across your content and just calling you names and being mean to you, there was nothing you could do. And now you can at least block them on some sites, and or you can even auto filtering comments and stuff for certain keywords.
Yeah, and I have a really, really big block words list. So I think there's like a toolbox. I think there's like a toolbox, and networking with other female skewing people can help with just like developing your toolbox full of stuff, and then cultivating a good audience around you, and people who understand that these problems are not even or fair, so that there can be an equitable situation going on. But I don't go. The reason that I didn't announce my gender when I started publishing my projects in college was because I wanted them to be evaluated just on their merit. And it's often, and a lot of my work is very like quote unquote crafty, but I also studied fine art and have made fine art and had work exhibited in fine art establishments. And so often people say about art that is made from crafty things is that it's crafts until a man comes along and acknowledges it as art. And then otherwise it's just crafts that women do. So like knitting sweaters and stuff. But if I put it in a gallery and there's a male curator or whatever. So it's interesting to know that like it's permeating our vernacular, and just being cognizant of it is sort of, I think that's what they mean when they say woke, although that's becoming like a bad word now as people are using it. But I think that's what that means, is just acknowledging that things are different, which is why I think it's so funny, the tirades against that word.
I'm honestly shocked at how naive I am. Like the thought of you having to hide your gender so that your project is judged properly is insane thought to me.
Well, and then like shortly after I was publishing things, and like Boing Boing was really big, and I was like really excited to get my projects on Boing Boing. So I'd post these projects, and then they'd say like it's by R. Stern, because my first name's Rebecca. And then I was thinking like, okay, that it like hits and it's nice. But then I saw people assuming that maybe I was a man, like leaving comments like he, blah, 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 he this. And I'm like, oh shoot. Like this, in some cases, depending on what I'm publishing, the story is more compelling if they know that I'm female.
Yeah.
And I've played into that heavily in my career. It's like, fine, you want to call me a unicorn for being like a woman who's interested in DIY electronics, then I'm going to take that natural anomaly advantage that I've got and play it to my advantage. There's no other way to make things. There's no way to make things fair and even. So I might as well take advantage of the benefits put forth to me. It's just like having red hair. It's like people remember my name more than I remember theirs, partially just because I'm a funny color.
Or an interesting person.
You know what I'm saying, right? Like the uniqueness. So like in the room, if you're the only woman in the room, you're going to be more memorable than everybody else. So even if my projects aren't initially more exciting or better than Joe Schmo's projects over here, I can say, yes, but also I am like not the person you expected to make this. And therefore the story is more compelling.
That's such a good, that's such a good way of like turning like a potential negative into such a great positive. And I hope some people listening take that.
It's a little scary because it can lead to like tokenism is scary if you say like, oh, well, we need to put a woman on this panel, and then they just pick any woman to put on the panel, and then she's put on the spot, and she's maybe way less qualified than all the men on the panel. That can backfire and be quite embarrassing for everyone involved. And tokenism doesn't feel great. So I don't know. I've grown into it. I'm no longer like I'm pretty experienced in my career, so I'm not afraid of that happening to me. But it has happened to me in the past, where it's like you realize after a panel discussion or something that you were just a token and that you didn't look awesome.
So I also sort of want to, speaking of all of the filters and the muting and the blocking that we have to do as women, I sort of wanted to talk about some of the pros and cons of social media. One of the biggest cons I think that I have seen or experienced, I should say, is that people get really interested in my personal life more so than I see with mail makers. They might find me on Instructables and end up on my Instagram and start messaging me about how beautiful I am and where do you live? Do you have a boyfriend? I bet you would cook better than my wife. Just like completely off the wall. Awful things that like I would never say that to someone I had no experience with. But I think one of the downsides is just that if you are open on social media and you do have a personal account, there are people that will sort of glob onto you just for being female. I don't think there's anything particularly special about me. It's just that I am a woman and I was the woman they saw on the site at the time.
Yeah. I'm sorry you have to go through that. That's fucked up.
But Jessy, I have the same thought process when I discovered your work because I'm a bit of an internet stalker. Takes one to know one. But I like see Jessy's work. Jessy's incredibly prolific, but she doesn't put her face in her work very often unless it's like the dry shampoo tutorial. Like you have a hard time getting away with not putting your face in that one. So I started seeing Jessy's tutorials on Instructables, and I'm like, dang, this person like publishes so much tutorials and they're all so good, and that means that we must get along. I want to be friends with this person who can't tell. I need to learn more about this person. And then because I didn't see your face in your Instructables, I'm like, it makes me more curious. It's like a mystery. So like that, I can see the intrigue, where like if you just I try to just put it out there. It's like, look, I don't live alone. I have a big dog. Leave me alone. And Jessy, you can say the same thing too.
I can understand where Becky's coming from. I mean, I do that with a lot of makers and stuff as well, but there's a difference between going to check out someone's profile because you think that you have same interests and you just want to be like on the same wavelength, and another one of messaging someone going, come and cook me dinner. And
well, you have to recognize who you are when you're saying those words, right?
Yeah.
Like if I slid into Jessy's DMs and I'm like, bet you make a good sandwich, it would be a joke. And she would reply with a laughing, crying emoji, but if you recognize who you are saying the words and like how it sounds coming out of, your being, it's lack of self-awareness in lots of those cases, right? Because innocent fans are very cute. Oftentimes, you don't know how old somebody is when they're writing to you on the internet, right? They're they can be much, much younger than you imagine, and little kids say the darndest things.
Do you think that you appeal to more children based on the crafts and or projects that you do? Like you did the most recent YouTube video, Becky, that you did was the wheel. It was for Tony, and it's a toy, right? It's a children's toy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that? And I've seen you've done a lot of other, things that could skew younger. Do you think you skew younger because you're female, or do you think you skew younger because that's what you're interested in? And I wonder, is that
I
something?
don't. My content, you might be surprised to know, does not skew younger.
Well, it does and it doesn't. I've seen a lot of it. Trust me. And Jessy,
But I'm telling you about my stats, my analytics.
Oh, okay. Your
My analytics
don't.
tell me that my audience does not skew as young as it might appear.
Interesting, because I could see your project skewing that way, but that's interesting to know. I wonder.
I think you'd be surprised with that about a lot of people that make content.
But also,
Like
when
you
can't get accurate counts on kids watching your stuff if they're logged in as their parents either.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, that's true, actually. Yeah, and you can't have an account unless you're over 13, right?
You can have a YouTube kid. No, you can have
right. Well,
kids.
that's the thing they do. But that's the thing. The kids who are younger than 13, are often browsing on their parents' account.
I remember being a kid, and I would always lie about my age so I could watch things or whatever. Like,
of course.
Yeah.
And you'd always.
I would too. I mean, my content is perfectly wholesome for kids, but it's mostly middle-aged.
I used to use my my brother's year of birth because he's 4 years older than me.
See, I'd always just go with 1900, and it was just like so ridiculous that they would offer that as an option, and I just like scrolled.
I'm 110 years old.
They were being inclusive. My grandma was on the email. She was sending me email chain letters.
Oh yeah. Well, my grandmother.
She wasn't born anywhere close to 1900, though.
Right. My grandmother, who's still alive and 100, doesn't understand email. And I one time tried to have a video chat with her during COVID, I couldn't see her, and she's living at home. And we tried to have a video chat, and she didn't understand what was happening. So,
oh no.
Yeah. So, I'm just gonna say some of the 100-year-olds don't understand what's happening.
Little side street.
I do agree.
How far back do you think they were well, actually, Jessy, you might be able to say, let me know. Like with Instructables, how far back do you allow someone to say they were born? Like you're not going to have the counter go back to 200 years ago, right?
No, maybe
not.
If it were really smart,
but where do you start?
It would be like a life expectancy, the current year minus the current life expectancy.
Well, that depends on the country.
Okay. So we have a 100-year gap, so it goes back to 1923. Okay. That makes sense. That seems reasonable.
Now my grandmother can't. She's born 22, so she can't go on Instructables anymore.
And she can't accurately represent her birthday.
Did she get a letter from the Queen?
Yep.
Wait, do Americans get a letter from the Queen? No, they don't believe in the Queen.
No.
And the Queen now would be the king.
What?
Yes,
Queen?
I get it, but I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love saying that.
Do you get a letter from? Wait, do you get a letter from the president when you turn 100?
Yeah,
I don't know. I've never turned 100.
You get said your name and your birthday gets said on the Today Show. I think if Al Roker is still doing that segment, that's exciting. I guess.
Is Al Roker still alive?
Yes. Hmm? He's mainly doing weather stuff.
Oh, okay. He's taking a step back. Okay, we've gotten way off topic. And
I wonder what Al Roker likes to make. He's got to have a maker hobby. I wonder what it is.
Okay, well, you know what? Out of everyone in this, you're the one who could reach out to him because you got contacts. You've been on Colbert.
I made a costume for Colbert and I sat backstage during taping. That's not the same as being on.
I have seen video of you on the Colbert set.
I had to hold the costume up on the stage for them to do a lighting check. And, because I had like a cool animation programmed on those LEDs and like, how cameras and PWM don't really go together. And so we were doing a lighting test and I was like, I told you that you're probably not going to want this fancy animation. Let's try it. And then they're like, and I'm like, here, let me make it solid blue. And then that's what I did while I was on the stage. And they're like, do you want to take a picture at the desk? And I'm like, but that's what you saw, right? I did take a picture at the desk.
Yeah.
And the lighting guy pulled me behind the scenes and showed me their cool LED stage lighting.
Oh,
So very
nice.
cool.
For those who don't know, PWM is pulse width modulation.
Yes. And it's why, like, when you film LEDs, you can get like a flashing.
The flicker, yeah.
The flicker.
So you have you've talked to people who might know people who might know people. I would need like 15.
But I'm also just going to Google like Al Roker hobbies. Do you have it like macrame or like, something cool like that?
I can imagine him
surprising
being a whittler.
What a tangent.
A whittler? Okay, whittling.
Yeah.
Okay, on International Women's Day, why don't we talk about some
Okay, I want to talk about Project Runway. Can we talk about Project Runway?
Yeah. We can talk about whatever you want.
Jessy, did you see I think it was in season 2, the episode that Diana Ang made the electronics in the dress?
No, I didn't. I've probably seen pictures online, but I have not been good at watching that show.
They definitely like painted her as the nerd, so I didn't love that in their reality show framing. But Diana Ang being on Project Runway and putting some electronics in her designs and using magnets in an interesting way and talking about being interested in engineering was like a highly influential moment for a lot of people mine and Jessy's age. And I know it was just season 2 of a silly, quote unquote, silly reality show, but that show showed the struggle of making something. It showed the like concepting of an idea and then figuring out what you needed to get there and then working through all the problems and then celebrating the result in a really artsy way. And I think that if you can see it, you can be it. So it's important to, it's important for women who can to be out in the open and in front of cameras to show other women and girls that what you can do if you want to and what's available to you now.
Well, and I think that is something really nice about the women I've met with that are makers or who work in science or tech, is that they're very good about pulling other women up and sort of like doing call outs to other women in the field and talking about how great they are and how you should go follow them, like spreading the word about their peers instead of competing. I found that really refreshing because there's like people like Allie Ward of the Ologies podcast. I mean, thinking about how many queer scientists of color, female scientists, like she has on her show. You would never see those people if you're just watching standard news programs or even news channels, science channels. So just being able to, be introduced to a much more diverse cast of people than you would get from standard like TV media, I think has made a really big difference in how girls look at what they can do and their future aspirations. There's not as many limitations as there are, or as there were when I was growing up. I'm sure there are still some places in America where it's really hard, but I think overall we're moving in a good direction just because it's sort of like women helping women. And I really love to see that.
Again, I want to say I'm very naive, so I don't mean any offensive anything I say because I'm so worried I'm going to say the wrong thing because I usually do. But I don't know how to word this properly. But do you think like things like, say, April Wilkinson being on the making show with Tim Allen and stuff, do you think that they may have chose her because she is a woman? And is that wrong for them to do that? Or like other shows like that as well? Like, we have a show here in Australia, like a reality TV show called Beauty and the Geek, right? And it's literally like hot girls and geeks. And to me, it feels wrong to like exploit the women like that. But I don't know.
Are those women getting paid maybe on the TV show? I don't think it's wrong to cast. I mean, April's obviously very competent and
of course. I'm not saying
poised and well spoken. So I think it doesn't scream tokenism, affirmative action to me to see someone like April on TV. And I mean, They picked her because they align with their political values. If you ask me, if you're asking my real opinion, it has nothing to do with gender.
Right.
But I can tell you that there is a token female appearance on Jimmy DeResta's show. The Netflix producers came in and said, "What do you mean you have all of these dudes? Like, where is the woman?" And then what's her face, who won the Making It show? She's very competent, but she is brought in like after a couple of episodes, and it's pretty clear that a producer was like, "I don't like the look of all these beards," and it's kind of transparent, which is I don't know. It kind of calls out their mistake. Like, that you should have had more women involved in the first place. And so therefore, I'm not going to take your show as seriously or commend it as highly as I would if you had thought about this beforehand.
But it's definitely commendable that they worked out their mistake.
They didn't work out a mistake. They've tokenism tacked on a lady they already knew who was already working on the show behind the scenes.
Interesting.
And but that's okay. The show doesn't have to be for... It just means that their show isn't groundbreaking in a
no, of course,
sociopolitical way.
As I said, like being a white male, I don't understand all this stuff. Like I've never had to deal with it, so it's so eye opening.
Well, and so the thing about Making It, this I think is the major difference to me. I want to see TV shows that are inclusive from the start. I want to see a lot of variety in the people they cast. And I want to make sure that, they are sort of showing all the different viewpoints, not trying to counter what they perceive is going to cause them backlash, which is what happened with Making It. That I do not respect. I hate it. It's like too little too late for me. Because it's more just like, I don't think this is going to look good. Instead of thinking like, we should get some makers of color and some lady makers, maybe some queer makers up in here. And no, they just don't think that, but they think they fixed it.
I don't think that that's what happened at all. And I've had chats with them about it. And I don't think it was a little tokenism to bring someone in. And they might have edited it in a way that is not how the people who were doing it at the time, they needed help and they knew someone who was working on this thing that could help them and who had the TV presence that was working there that could help them. And it had nothing to do with that she was female. It just
they won an Emmy for their editing,
I've
by the way.
seen stuff to the contrary.
They won an Emmy to change the topic slightly away from something we are obviously not going to find common ground on. They won an Emmy for their editing, and I think they deserved it. I thought that the way that the motion graphics played in with the things the lessons they were teaching was very funny. I laughed a lot because of the editing, and I'm glad that if they were going to win an Emmy for something, that's what they won the Emmy for.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it, and I know the people, and I think what it was a blind spot, which is unfortunate. And I think that's
producers aren't allowed to have blind spots. That's like literally their job.
It's why we're having conversations like this. Our podcast started with three guys. And when one of them left, I went, we need to not have another white guy on the podcast.
White guy with a beard.
Another white guy with a beard. I was like, this is silly if that's what we introduced. So we spent a long time looking for someone who could replace that. And that's...
to be fair, I do love white guys with beards. I'm engaged to one.
Okay.
They're great. I love me some white guys with beards.
But I think it's important to recognize that you do have, that everyone has blind spots in every area. Right?
I mean, like I said, I'm so naive about it that I don't even realize that I'm doing it. That I have a massive blind spot. Like, as I said, this is such an eye opener to me because I never realized how big of an issue everything was that I didn't realize. Like, I've probably been feminist or something and not even realized I've done it.
Right. Well, I don't know if we were talking about it in the show or the pre-show, but talking about giving out your address. It is 100% something I never once thought about as a as a man, and the first person that gave me a PO box was a woman. I went, and when I saw it, I was like, "Well, that's interesting, like a PO box." And then another woman gave me a PO box. And it's just like I've exchanged stickers with hundreds of people, and the only people with PO boxes are women. And I just went, and then eventually I put two and two together, like listening to like Lindsay Creative talking about someone who was like almost stalking her because of she was posting like her walks during the day, and she's like, and the person was messaging her, "Oh, I know where you live now," right? I know it's like that's a really awkward thing. Like, why would anyone think that's okay to say? It's so weird that I would never once. And I've had that conversation with someone who posted the run maps who lives in Ottawa. And I went, "Hey, you went by my house," or whatever. Like, you went really close to my house. And it's like weird that I have no problem seeing that to a guy. But if a woman, they wouldn't even post the run maps, right? Like, it's, yeah, exactly. If you're not watching,
I want to tell you my story about my Garmin. I want to tell you about my Garmin video, but you had your hand up.
Just quickly on what Gret's saying. When I first started doing sticker swaps and stuff, I didn't want to give out my address, but it wasn't because I was concerned because of my gender. It's because I know I've got heaps of tools downstairs that I freely put up online, and people know I have, and I didn't want to get robbed.
That too.
It had nothing. Like I had no concern of like, oh, someone's going to stalk me or anything. It was all about just making sure I don't get robbed.
Or the camera equipment, or like showing
exactly.
I don't want to show too much of the like area around this room as far as like outside the windows goes, so that nobody can figure out how to break into my studio and steal all of my camera equipment. So that's a concern also. But I have had a rabid, albeit like friend of a friend fan show up at my house unexpected one time. It's only happened once, and it was like not a certifiable cause for like the police or anything like that. But I did yell out the window, "Don't you see how this looks?" And he went, "Oh my God.
People really
yes."
There's huge YouTube channels that have had the same issue as well.
Right.
And all of them are like, can you, like, do you not see in your head, like, what you were doing? Like, it's...
He didn't realize until just that moment. Then he asked me if he wanted to get milkshakes. I said, no.
I realize what I've done wrong, but I'm still going to pursue. Wow.
Yeah, people are so bold. I mean, even if you have the PO box, if you are not like thinking ahead on a business license or something that's public, people can also find you that way. And I've had people message me and say, "Oh, I didn't know you lived there." Or when I still lived in Louisville, Kentucky, I worked at the biggest mall there. And I guess I had mentioned it on the Instructables forums. And I had several different people come to the mall when I was working at the watch repair shop and introduce themselves like we were just good buddies. And that was
cool, very cool, and not scary at all.
Yeah. Those were days where I would like call my boyfriend to meet me at the mall because I didn't want to go to the parking lot alone.
This is that space that exists when they say internet celebrity is famous enough to have stalkers, but not wealthy enough to have security.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And I get it too, Jessy. People are naturally curious, and because I live in New York, I don't know. It's actually easy. I feel like it's easier to obfuscate my location. I do so on purpose. I could be making a lot of good content about like the business that's directly downstairs, but I don't want to tell anyone what kind of business is downstairs. I don't want them to be able to narrow down like where I live. And even just saying that I live on the second floor, which was like part of my workshop tour, like, oh, how do you get your stuff up the stairs? Oh, it's just one flight, is like, oh my gosh, am I giving out too much information? And I made this Garmin video. I made a review of my Garmin smartwatch, and I showed its like mapping capabilities and stuff. And I went to the local park, which is about a 10-minute, 15-minute walk away. And I posted, and I didn't start the location. I'm not stupid, so I didn't start the location tracking until I was like a ways away from my house anyway. But then, of course, I get these comments. Some of them are concerned. Oh my gosh, Becky, you're doxing yourself. I want to make sure, YouTube has this blur feature where you can blur it. And I'm like, I already thought about this. And like, thank you for flattering me in thinking that I could afford to live that close to the park. But like I said, you actually looked up the home prices, right? Where you're thinking I'm living, like, that's not where I'm living. And, but it's really interesting to see people being very concerned about it and noticing that, like, when women make themselves vulnerable, it gets pointed out both for positive and negative reasons.
Even a PO box gives the state, right? Well, even more the city, right?
Yep.
Because I've heard of YouTubers.
Oh, yeah, and sometimes even a neighborhood.
They'll get a PO
like,
box in a state.
Yeah, it'll give you the city and the state, and then but not necessarily the specific post office box. But I don't know. There's a lot of pack and ships, and you're going to go to a pack and ship to get a PO box that is. I had one for a while. I don't get enough fan mail to warrant the expense, I'm thinking like that pack and ship is right across the street from my house, and so it was useless. Because if they just go to the pack and ship and stand outside the pack and ship long enough, they'll see me walk into the pack and ship and then walk directly across the street and into my house. So it needs to be farther away than across the street from your house.
Yeah.
Right. That's insane to me to think that you have to think that much about it. And it saddens me. Really.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think about it any more so than I do about general city safety as well, right? Keeping an eye on your surroundings to make sure that when you're opening your door, there isn't anybody right around you who could force their way into your place. And it's not even that's just street smarts in general. So when you extend it to my internet persona, it's sort of occupational hazard.
I've never ever thought that. Sorry. I've never once ever thought about it.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Women live by a completely different set of rules in most cases than men do. And it's not something that we're taught in a lot of cases. It's something we have to learn because of uncomfortable, weird situations that you cannot predict that happen to you. And so, there's just a lot more that goes on with everything that we do. And online, I think it's even more so just because in public, I only have to worry about maybe the two dudes that are on the block that I'm walking down or the one guy that's near, my front door when I'm coming home at night. But online, you have thousands of people watching you, looking at you, thinking about you possibly. And so it gets amplified a bit more.
I mean,
even in your content making, you would have to think so much more about checking all the frames and everything as well, which is something I've never really had to think about either. But making sure that you haven't shown too much or.
There is a cool tool on YouTube to blur stuff. If you forgot you had a package in the background that has your address on it, but I have the policy: don't even let any packages come into my studio without putting black tape over the address labels, and that includes the barcodes. Usually, the barcode's just a number, but you never know. QR code, 2D barcodes can be read by devices and not eyeballs.
I have definitely let people know that the barcode was a tracking number, which led them to their address because they did not realize, and they posted stuff.
I would have never known
gift exchange online, and this is all done through third parties so that you don't share your address with the entire world, and then they go and post the package, and I'm like, this shows your address. They're like, wow. I used to work in access information, and that was one of the things that a lot of people didn't realize. And then they were sending the barcode with all the personal information, and you're supposed to protect it. And I'm like, yeah, it
looks like gibberish to your eyeballs, but not to a camera.
Exactly.
I feel like we're definitely getting away from the topic, but just quickly, when I first started making content, I kept asking people, why do people blur their number plate? Because here in Australia, your number plate, if you look up a number plate, all you can find out is what type of car it is and when the registration expires. It's not like America.
You can't look up someone's address unless you know somebody who used to
be able to go into the RMS or whatever you guys call it, and pay money to find out the details of where that car lived.
Yeah, a
Also,
long
like,
time
that
ago.
like
was never a thing
Spokio,
here.
but back in the day. Have y'all seen Spokio?
Like-
It's what they're usually using on the
No.
Catfish TV show. I really like to watch that show, Catfish, because it's
Me too.
the really good training for how to protect yourself against crazy people on the internet, or to figure out if
Yeah,
people are real. But I've done a couple motorcycle projects. I'm not worried about blurring my license plate because now nobody can get my address from my license plate, but they can look it up in the FCC database after I got my ham radio license. Right. And that's something I needed to know before I applied for my ham radio license was, they're going to ask you for your address. That address is going to go in a federal database that's look upable on the internet. And so I made sure to put my hackerspace. And you know what? I have received one Christmas card addressed to my call sign at my hackerspace address. And
That is
the only mail I
ridiculous.
have received there. But it is a Christmas card
so
from a fellow
weird.
ham radio operator.
There is no reason at all that someone should be able to access your personal information at all.
Well, they need to be able to look for, if the law says that if you're applying for a radio license, your station needs to have a location, and that location is, unless you have an office, it's your home.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's one of the ways the law hasn't caught up with modern day crime. A lot of laws are super sexist, right?
Oh, yes.
Right.
And this one, without even like trying to be anything to having to do with gender, it ends up being sexist just because of the crime distribution, the natural crime distribution for violent crime toward like where the victims are women is much higher than the perpetrators being women.
Well, we have gone all over the map on this one, and I've really appreciated the conversation. But you know what we have to do right now? We have to thank our Patreon supporters, especially the F-Clamp level of Brent Jarvis from Clean Cut Woodworking, Vincent Ferrari from Digitally Creative, Scott from Dad It Yourself DIY, Joe Herdina, Lawrence from Maritime Knife Supply, Rich from Low End Design, and David Wood from DW Wood Builds, as well as everyone else who supports us on all the different levels. Thank you so much. If you want access to the pre-show, we ended up starting the conversation before we even got into the conversation. And I'm sure the after show, we're going to talk about even more interesting stuffs. You can go to patreon.com/clamp and you'll get access to that. And now onto the CLAMPmendations. CLAMPmendations!
It's actually really funny that we were talking about crime and stuff, because my CLAMPmendation for this week is a YouTube channel called Insider, but more specifically, their playlist that they have called How Crime Works. And it's really interesting. They've got, so each video is specific on certain things. The one I was watching today was a guy that has robbed 100 banks, and he was going through the process of like how he would get ready to rob the bank and how he would pick what bank he wants to rob. And it was just really interesting. Like each video is how things happen, how drug muling happens, how guns are taken into Mexico and all that sort of stuff. And it's really interesting. It's either a cop, an ex-cop, or the person that did it.
Very interesting.
I second that CLAMPmendation. I've been subscribed to that channel for a really long time.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, Becky, what about you?
I was, believe it or not, going to suggest the Business Insider YouTube channel, but it's related to the Insider YouTube channel in a very similar style. So instead, I'm going to recommend my friend's YouTube channel, Michelle at Lab Muffin Beauty Science. Her YouTube channel is called Lab Muffin Beauty Science. She's a PhD chemist who breaks down beauty products and myths and skincare science related to skincare and skincare products. And so as a redhead, I knew about her channel. She's like one of the only legitimate level-headed explanations of sunscreen ingredients on YouTube. That's how I found her originally. Was I'm, as a redhead, very interested in sunscreen ingredients, and she taught me all about them. But she's continuing to debunk like why paraben free is a silly thing for people to say, and all kinds of really interesting, legit science going on. But also, like, she talks about the commercial, the capitalist like reasons why marketing things in beauty products are the way they are. And since I don't know very much about that area of life, I find it very fascinating. Lab Muffin Beauty Science.
Both my sons are redheads and very, very, very fair-skinned. They did not take after my complexion, so sunscreen is the thing I've never once in my life worried about, and I've never had a sunburn. And I look at my sons and I look at them and I go, this is going to be your life. Your life is going to be looking up what sunscreen is and applying it. So
Don't let them get burned before they go through puberty. It doubles your chances of skin cancer every time you get a blistering burn before puberty.
Oh, well, I've never had that, so that's very interesting.
But you love your kids, right?
Well, yeah, no, my wife has obviously the fairer skin, so she realizes this. That is a very interesting thing, though.
Takes two to tango. They couldn't have gotten it from without recessive genes from you. Saying that's how it works.
Well, I have no clue what that means, but because I'm not.
You're saying your wife is in charge of the sunscreen, and she does a diligent job of being in charge of the sunscreen.
And I do it too when I remember.
Oh, such privilege coming out of this guy's mouth, don't you think, Jessy? Such privilege. I've never had a sunburn. My wife takes care of the sunscreen.
Mate, do you know how stressful it is when I have to get up for the kids and make them lunch for school? It is the most stressful thing that I have to go through. I am not a mother. That sounds wrong saying that. I couldn't do my wife's job. No, that sounds wrong too. I couldn't do what my wife does.
You could try to say, I respect women.
I respect everything my wife does because it is like the shit she has to go through is insane with my kids.
Yeah. So, anyways, I also respect women. I'm going to suggest that you guys all go check out DIY Huntress, who is...
Oh, Sam. Yeah, she's great.
She is great. She is... so I actually met her a long, long time ago. She used to go and like troll through Reddit. There was like this YouTubers with under 1,000 subscribers Reddit subreddit. And that is where she commented, and there was like a daily thread of post your video, and hopefully someone would look at it. And you were supposed to look at other people's videos and give them comments and feedback. And she, even though at the time she had way more than 1,000 subscribers, gave me feedback on one of my videos. And I always remember this. And I recently met her at Maker's Camp in October. And I mentioned that to her, and she was like, I don't go there anymore because of the vitriol on Reddit and how bad it is. And anyways, she is recently her latest video is about redoing her kitchen, and she posts a lot of I think, from if I understand it correctly, has actually been redoing it for a long time and is only now posting the video, which is like, I as a content creator, obviously you got to realize how hard that is to be working so hard on something and not be posting anything, because from what I understand, she didn't even post anything on Instagram about it, which that's crazy to me. But go check her out. We'll have links in the bio, or no, in the show notes.
Oh no, social media has rotted your brain.
Yeah. Jessy, how about you?
So I would like to recommend a lady woodworker that I found on Instagram, and she's not really followed by most of the people I know. So she's kind of like out of the little circle. Her name is Clara Kim, and her username on there is Clara's Woodshop. She makes beautiful wooden furniture. Like it's on here, she calls it functional art, and I agree with that. It's really, really good. And I like her reels. She has a very calming presence. I like watching her videos. So yeah, you guys should check her out.
Very nice. Well, I'll have to check that out. It is always interesting to find new people. So we have started. We're deciding that we're going to abandon the slang of the week, and instead we're going to do an Ask Us Anything. And it was Ask Jessy Anything, but we've run out of Jessy specific questions, and she's been here long enough that it's now just an Ask Us Anything. But because I started going back to the work in the actual office this week, I didn't have a chance to think ahead and ask people to do an Ask Us Anything, so we don't have one. So Becky, how about you ask us anything?
I want to, I guess, since you're talking about your blind spots, I guess I want to know what you think you currently do that's outside your blind spot to be inclusive of women and female identifying people in your daily lives, and then something you know you should be doing but could be doing more of.
So I'll start off. I do try and find female makers, and when people suggest female makers, I look at them more often than if they suggest male makers. And that sounds like a really weird thing to say. I when we were looking for a new host, I went through my Instagram and I went, I don't follow enough females, and I don't talk to any of them. Like, I talk to a few of them, but I don't talk to as many of them as males. It's almost, let's say, 90-10. And when I realized that, I went, I need to have more conversations with these people because I don't know why I'm not. So that's like a blind spot, and it's one of those things that I keep telling myself I need to do more of it, and I'm not really great at it because I find oftentimes I don't know why I connect with some people and I don't connect with other people, but I worry about coming across wrong. And as Jessy can attest, I do come across sometimes as a little bit stalkerish because my real life job is an investigator. So, Becky, if I wanted to know where you lived, I could find it. I don't care. I don't want to, but I just know that's the type of thing. I knew where Jessy lived because she posted a picture on the internet and I found it. But this was research I did because I didn't want to end up with someone on my podcast that was like a closet KKK person or something. I don't know. I just wanted to like really dive deep, and I didn't want.
How well do you really know, Jessy? Just kidding. That is not. An insinuation.
I am from Kentucky. Uh-oh.
Exactly. So that's where anyways, I did like a lot of research, but it's only when I need to or when I want to. So
that's
I know
a big step, though. I think making a conscious effort to make sure you have more conversation with women is like a huge step and a huge thing for you to continue doing, because it's something that will increase your empathy as you go along.
Right. And at work, it's a completely different thing. But in the maker world, it's like a weird, I don't know why, but almost everyone I talk to is men.
Well, and I think it's important to remember that you're not going to come off weird if you're talking about the work they're doing, because that's what they're showing you. That's what they want to talk about. The only time people come off weird is when I've spent goddamn 6 months working on a project and I post it and the first comment is, "You're beautiful." And then I want to stab someone. But as long as you're talking about the project, it's going to be appreciated.
I don't think I've ever once comment on someone's appearance if I didn't know them.
I couldn't imagine.
And it's often
calling some random person
my friends.
Well, then that means you two are two of the good ones. But then I would encourage you, if you recognize that when you're looking in the comment section and you see there's a comment that is just about appearance, or I get sometimes like a backhanded compliment that's like cute and the project's not bad either.
Yeah.
You should be. Yeah. My request to you, dear white men with beards, is to call those people out. Call those people out, but not in a mean way, and maybe make your comment that you were going to make anyway a reply to that person's comment that shows them an example of how it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
Guess it's my turn to throw myself under the bus.
Do it.
All right. To be completely honest, I feel like I'm going to be a little bit controversial myself here because, one, I feel like I don't ever see like color or gender, race, anything like that. Like I always just, all I care about is someone's personality. I don't care who you are. Just all I care about is personality. In saying that, I'm also very inside when it comes to say women and stuff. Like when I go to the gym, I am so concerned that women are going to think that I'm staring at their asses or stuff like that. And I feel like I need to be a lot more comfortable in those sort of situations. Like Grant said, if I'm at work, there's so many female employees in my work that I talk to them, no issue at all. But then I go to a setting where I feel more uncomfortable, say the gym, and I am so concerned. I'm always worried that girls are going to be like, oh, why is he looking at me? And like, I couldn't imagine either, like Jessy said, if you're talking about their work, I couldn't go up to a woman at the gym and say, like, you're doing good or anything, because in my mind, I feel like it's going to come across as I'm trying to hit on them. And maybe that's something
the gym is a particularly tough example.
Yeah,
because they're not putting that work out there for you.
But
you know,
I understand that, but I mean, like in general though. Yeah, so when I'm in my occupation, I'm fine. I have no issue. But it's out in the open world, I feel so uncomfortable around women, and it's it comes down to I'm so worried that I'm going to do the wrong thing or give off the wrong impression.
Do you think like movies and culture have a part to play in that, and that they're making it even harder because they're like I see on Instagram like these people going off on people for staring at them and stuff, and then
I don't know what TikTok. I mean, TikTok's a highly recommendation based platform, right? But like I saw a really funny TikTok the other day that really spoke to me. That was not single girl at the gym, and she's like doing squats and wearing a long sweatshirt, and then like single girl at the gym and she's wearing the same sweatshirt but it's like tucked up into her bra so that you can see her butt, and she's doing squats. And I'm like, okay, like it was very funny to me. Like this, it was basically a PSA. Here's how you can tell if a woman is advertising her singleness to you at the gym. And
I mean, to be honest, there's a reason why girls wear like scrunch bums and things, right?
They wear what? What was that Australian slang that you just put at us?
Yoga pants that have
you don't know what a scrunch bum?
Like
scrunch bum. Oh, okay. Like gathering around the butt crack area.
Yeah, like
I just never heard that expression before. Scrunch bum.
Maybe it's me being naive, but I feel like girls that wear that, like, they can't be comfortable. Surely
it's so comfortable. Oh my gosh, the yoga, they're so comfortable.
They are
so comfortable, and like, don't even get me started on
a constant wedgie.
Yeah, you forget it's there, and if it's a nice enough fabric, it's not good if it's like a not stretchy fabric, but often it's like a very stretchy fabric. You just forget it's there. It's great, and it also prevents like that butt crack sweat that's really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, super comfortable.
Yeah. Yoga pants with a back seam are they're the best thing.
Maybe
that's all
I'm concerned because I am a creep.
Well, the first step is like realizing it, but okay. That was a really good question that in reality deserves a lot more thought, and
for sure.
I just challenge you. Anybody who wants to do better just should be asking themselves that question whenever they can think about it. Like on the bus, what can I be doing to support women? In the conference room at work, what can I be doing to support women? And even if that's just saying like, oh, hang on, I think Tracy had something to say. Mm-hmm. Like even as small as just making space for women's opinions. And so if you're just asking yourself that question, like, what am I doing to support women? It can help you just like talking with them. It could help you, I don't know, maybe be more secure in yourself as an ally and a feminist, because it sounds like you're scared of being perceived as not a feminist. And so therefore you just need to be more secure in what makes you a feminist and be living that truth. And then you'll exude like positive vibes, and nobody will think you're a creep at the gym.
Well, it's a little bit funny because the gym I used to go to F45, and it's like everyone sort of goes to the same time. There was like a bit more of a family. There was heaps of girls that I talked to with no issue, but it's going to the gym where everyone's doing their own thing is where I'm like, am I a creep for going up and talking? I mean, I wouldn't even go up and talk to a guy that's working out, to be honest. But
yeah,
I don't know. It just feels so much more creepier when it's a single setting.
That's exactly what it is. It's all about the environment. And if you like, if it feels wrong to go up to someone and talk to them, then don't do it. Unless there's like a really good reason, like, oh, you dropped your iPhone and you forgot it at the last place. Like, probably a good, hey, you.
I don't know. I've seen plenty of TikToks of like, hey, you dropped your phone. I'm fucking single. I'm fucking married or something. Like,
yeah.
I have a boyfriend.
I'm taking.
I don't know. I feel like the gym is a particularly charged place that has like very little to do
fair enough.
with making stuff. If you're at a maker space or a shop
Right.
where everyone's doing their own project and you say like, oh, hey, like that looks really cool. Nobody's gonna think you're hitting on them necessarily, right? Like in a creative space where people are being creative, the gym, I agree, could be like your own thing. I'm doing there just to do my business. Leave me alone. You know, you're not there to make friends, but like when you're making stuff, like, aren't you always open to making a friend who's interested in the same type of making stuff you are?
Yeah.
And I'll bring it back to me being able to go up to Sam at Baker Camp because I went and talked to Laura and Simone and all these other people that any other setting I would not have walked up to, but at Maker Camp because we're talking, they know I'm here because I'm a maker.
You're vetted,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You're vetted as a
been to
maker.
Camp.
You're vetted as a maker. No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I have not been invited.
Oh,
The
well, it's an open. You just buy a ticket. I don't know. Yeah.
You should, you know what I mean. Maybe you don't know what I mean. But yeah, because you're in that environment where it's your expectations, right? Your actions are matching with the expectations of the setting, and that's important. Yeah.
Well, on that
really
note,
like
I want to
calling it vetted. Sorry, I just want to say one more thing. I really like calling it vetted because I think that is very important because there definitely are people in the maker community that you kind of get warned away from. But then there are a lot of people who, like, if you have mutual friends with them, you can pretty much likely assume that they're safe and be right about it. So yeah, I think vetting is also very important for making everybody feel comfortable.
It's true. It's a good point. Well, I want to thank TF Turning for our theme song. You should go check them out. I want to thank Becky Stern for coming on the podcast. You want to tell everyone where they can find you?
I have a website. It's called beckystern.com. You can look me up. I am the most searchable Becky Stern on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and all of your other favorite social media networks.
All right. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It was actually a really interesting and fun conversation. If you want to find all of us, you can search for the Clamp podcast everywhere. And until next week, cheers and have a great day.
Bye.
Clamp on.